In episode 484, Ryan and Jose are joined by writer Peter Atkins to talk about the Quartet of Torment 4K Blu-ray and Hellraiser Bloodline. This is the Clive Barker Podcast, where longtime fans Ryan and Jose interview guests, bring you the news, and take deep dives into Barker-related stuff. This episode is available in podcast audio and YouTube video. This episode is sponsored by Don Bertram's Celebrate Imagination. Don Bertram is a longtime friend of Clive and advocate of his art, but Don's unique and inspiring paintings are for sale, and over 50% of the proceeds go to the Arts and Medicine program at the Texas Children's Cancer Center. There's even a paver in Washington, D.C. representing Celebrate Imagination. We're thrilled that this worthy cause is sponsoring our podcast again this year, and we hope that you'll consider looking over his Pinterest page and commissioning a painting of your own. For commissions, Don requires no money down, and there will be no obligation on your part. You can also head over to the Etsy shop to buy one of his books, like A Chimney Sweep's Tale, Celebrate Imagination, or The Imaginaries. Follow the link in the show notes, or click on the side banner, and let's see what's new with Don Bertram today. Check out his paintings The Wink and The Innocent on Facebook. And Hummer 3. Also check out his newest video on YouTube detailing the best cutlery gallery prints or art photos. We recently made this video public from our Patreon exclusive playlist. Let's welcome our other sponsor, Ed Martinez, and his YouTube channel. Lots of great special effects videos and Barker related content. What's the latest from Ed? Take a look at the Clive Barker at the Fangoria Weekend of Horrors, Los Angeles, 1992, and in the next video, Clive Barker introduces Bernard Rose, who talked about making Candyman at the same event. Hey, if you want to help us out, support us on Patreon at patreon.com/BarkerCast589. Our subscribers will get exclusive access to content not available anywhere else, like our Collector's Corner video series, rare Barker videos, and early behind-the-scenes stuff. Our supporters get to help us choose episode topics and even join us on the podcast. Our supporters also get access to the exclusive channel in our Discord server. We'll be forever grateful if you consider helping us out and subscribing to our Patreon. We owe everything to this circle of magicians, so let's give a shout out to our Patreon supporters and see what's new on Patreon. A shout out to the circle of magicians who make this possible: David Anderson, Erik Van T Holt, Daniel Elven, Amanda Stewart, Bradley Gartz, our newest member Markus, and of course Don Bertram and Ed Martinez for sponsoring us. Also exclusive for our Patreon members, a new video from Ed Martinez showing the 1993 book signing by Clive Barker at the Razorline booth at the San Diego Comic-Con. I also plan to have a new Collector's Corner video about this funny copy of Hellraiser Revelations. Well, welcome. This is episode 484 of the Clive Barker Podcast.
Wow.
And good morning, Jose, and our special guest, Peter Atkins, is back with us again.
Hey, guys. Good to see you again.
It's always great talking to you, Pete.
Well,
yeah,
it's always great being on the show. We've been looking forward to it.
We should have you on here more often. We don't need to. It doesn't always have to be about Hellraiser 2 and 3 and 4.
Yeah, we can talk about football and women. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah,
sure. So yeah, we are going back into our little discussion of Arrow videos, Hellraiser Quartet of Torment.
Yes,
this great
We've been
box.
covering that box set for a year and a half now.
Yeah, right.
It came out in 2023.
That's right.
Right. And
the European
then,
British version. Yeah.
And then since then, of course, there's been this equally attractive in terms of the packaging, the less expensive version that Arrow released, which I guess they haven't released in the US yet, but they have. What do they call it? The Hellraiser Tetralogy.
Trilogy of Terror or something like that.
Yeah.
They're good on the alliteration.
They are good.
What is with these words? Like when Alien came up with the quadrilogy, it's like, is that even really a word? Quadrilogy.
Is that what they called it? I thought they went
it was the Alien quadrilogy, and now we've got a tetralogy, which is the same number. And this one's I like quartet because that's a real word.
Quartet is a real word, and also my classical learning has deserted me. I can't remember which one, quadrilogy or tetralogy is one of those weird words where it's half Latinate and half Greek.
Yeah.
Like television apparently is a wrong formation because
Right.
Yeah.
remember,
Well,
I think tele
because
is Greek.
quartet is Latin and logos is
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right. Yeah.
And trilogy is the I is from tri, right? So quadra, it's in quadra has an A on the end of it, not an I.
Oh yeah. Well, that's just terrible. Nobody should buy that then. It's scholarly offensive.
Yeah.
But
We'll
yes,
send an angry letter to
Quartet
20th
of
Century
Torment
Fox.
and its younger, cheaper sibling,
Yeah.
the tetralogy with those nice purple covers. I'm sure you guys have seen them, but
That's right.
hopefully you didn't spring for them because you already had the Quartet of Torment. But
Yeah.
And one of them, I think
I have the pinhead version.
yeah,
that's right. Me too. Oh, that side right there.
Right.
But the one you were talking about, I think it's the one where you see 4 different Cenobites, right? You have Pinhead, you have the Angelique, Barbie. Yeah. And for the Hellraiser 3, it's Barbie the Cenobite.
I know. I got to be a cover model. It's great.
Yeah, which we talked about that little Marvelous Videos YouTube video on our last episode.
Oh, yeah.
Where they did a little origin of Barbie Cenobite with Rick the bartender.
Nice. I mean, I thought that, they did wonders given that my entire screen time, both as Rick and as Barbie, is 1.5 minutes.
That's right.
Really? Is that it? It seemed like
using those clips. I kept serving that drink to Terry and I kept breaking out of that wall, but it was fun. They put shit up every 3 fucking hours. They're astonishing. I mean,
yeah.
Well, I know nothing about them, so I won't make any judgments about how they work or how quickly they get them up.
Oh, sure. Nowadays, there's a lot of YouTube channels that will put stuff out every day, and sometimes you can tell when something's just AI slop, and you can tell when something has actually had someone do some work behind it. So this one was actually pretty decent. It was pretty interesting.
A human narrator for sure. Yeah,
that's right. And they go back to find out the backstory of Barbie and the Richard Bloodstone character and all of that, which I honestly didn't even remember that it was that name. I just knew
it's not in the movie.
It's
they
not,
must
right?
have. I think somebody else does the research, and then they hire, or it's a friend of theirs who does the narration. So somebody must have dug. Well, I guess you can go to Hellraiser Wiki probably. I mean, I don't go to Hellraiser Wiki, so I'm not sure what's on there. But they could have got it from Hellraiser Wiki. But the only place Richard Bloodstone was ever named, because he was just Rick, and he was Rick because Humphrey Bogart's character in Casablanca is Rick.
There you go.
He's like the coolest bar owner in history. So. They said, "What's his name?" And I said, "Oh, Rick."
Yeah, they might have gotten that
from the only place Richard Bloodstone. Yeah, you were going to say. I think we're going to say the same. Yes, the only place I named him and gave him a little backstory was in that Children of Fire story.
Oh yeah. Well, and they did mention that in that story in their video.
Where you hear the story about DJ, the Cenobite DJ also and all that stuff.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Right. That's a good story. It really fills in a little bit of, the story behind those pseudo Cenobites. So that was a fun read. 1990.
I mean, it's weird with that stuff. It's like, so is that now canonical, or because it was just, Mike Brown edited that Fanzine Dread all those years ago, and he just said, "Can you write something?" So, I just splurged it out, and it's like, well, but because it went out to accompany the movie, is it, and because it was, the writer of the movie.
Well, it doesn't contradict anything,
I guess.
Yeah, it doesn't contradict anything else. So sure,
right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's from the writer. Yeah.
So I would consider that, and I am actually in the Hellraiser Wiki for Barbie right now, and it does have that name in there.
It does have it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's cool. That's cool that they have an article for it.
Yeah.
But moving out of the Hellraiser 3 into the 4th.
Yes, sorry, to the one you actually want to talk about.
It's okay.
yeah, between 1992 and 1994, it was wild. After Hellraiser 3, I remember, Pinhead was everywhere. He was in Arsenio Hall. He was like in the MTV's Spring Break. He was
Yeah. He
you know,
was refused admission somewhere by David Spade. I
that's
forget
right.
which
That's
film
right.
that
Yeah.
was, but
Yeah.
I've seen that clip. It's hilarious. And
Well, the big thing for that for Doug, because as I know all your viewers and listeners know this, but Doug, Clive, and I are all from Liverpool, um, and some people from Liverpool are obsessive football fanatic with soccer,
mhm.
and Doug is both a Liverpool FC freak and a Beatles freak. In a I love the Beatles. I'm sure
Sure.
Clive loves the Beatles, but we weren't obsessive fans. The point of all this is that Doug got to meet Ringo at, was it the Jay Leno one that Dave Spade? Whatever it was, Ringo was a
Yeah.
guest that night,
Oh.
and Doug only did that sort of that one sketch, so he wasn't formally introduced. But you have to remember, Doug is a little boy, this little Beatles fan. So he's walking down the corridor, and here comes Ringo
Yeah.
to his
Yeah.
interview. Ringo pauses, looks at him, and says, "All right, Pinhead," and walks on. And it made Doug's
Oh
Yeah.
day,
God.
made his
Oh,
year.
Oh, wow.
It was like,
I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Ringo knows who I am. All right,
Yeah.
Pinhead.
I know. It was at the Video Music Awards. Ringo was wearing this
Is
this
that what it was? Okay, yeah, because there was
turban.
did they get a photo together?
They got a photo together. I'm looking
Okay,
at it
right.
right now. I, I
Yeah.
I will add that to the show notes afterwards. There's a picture of
Right.
David Spade and Ringo wearing that weird turban that he had on for the show, and
Right.
there's one with Pinhead as well.
Great.
So
Great.
really, really fun stuff. But yeah, so and then after the third one, you and Clive, how quickly did they contact you guys to get started on Bloodline? Do you remember that?
Um, not with a precise period of
Sure.
time. What, it feels like they wanted, what had happened again, I know you guys know, is Miramax, the Weinstein brothers, had come
Mhm.
in as distributors of Hellraiser 3. They didn't produce Hellraiser 3, but they
Right,
picked it
for
up for this.
transatlantic. Mhm.
Right. And then bought the franchise outright from Larry Cuppin, who'd
Yeah.
owned it as Transatlantic. Um, so my sense was once they were in the Hellraiser business, they wanted to move on to Hellraiser 4, or whatever we were going to call it. But you're right, mathematically, Jose, it's like there's at least 4 years before we're even in development.
Right, because it was 96. Yeah, you're
96 it
right.
was released, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know. I don't have a memory of like being in the wilderness and wondering
Mhm.
if they're going to do it. They pretty much said, we bought the franchise, we want to do Hellraiser 4. But equally,
Mhm.
it's not like there was a 2-year development period while I was
Yeah.
writing it. So to put this briefly, I am incapable of answering your question. I don't
So there's not multiple versions of
not
this
like
of
Hellraiser
scripts
3.
like Hellraiser 3, right?
No, I mean there
This
are
was kind of the main
several.
idea.
Yes, there are several drafts
Hmm.
of Hellraiser
Yeah.
4. And as ever on the grey market, it's always the bad ones that get out. It's like, oh, second draft? No, no, no. First and third were good.
Yeah.
But
Right.
they are
Yeah.
essentially drafts of the same
Yeah.
script, unlike the
Yeah.
situation with
The
Hellraiser
the
3.
same the same sort of bloodline concept with the
Yes,
three
absolutely. From
timelines.
the
Yeah.
get-go, that
And
was
and
Yeah.
the different drafts, when you make another draft, pages that change have a different color, right? So sometimes it's blue, then it's
yes. Once we're actually in production, that's
okay.
true.
Once it's a
Um,
shooting script.
yeah, yes,
Yeah.
exactly. But the various drafts you do prior to production, when you're still technically in development, no, that's just a new script,
Mhm.
all on creamy off-white paper, like all of them.
Hmm. Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, the color pages are um, so that people actively involved in the production can literally swap the pages out and they know where they are. and there's an official sequence of colors, and one of the ways we knew Hellraiser 4 was in trouble is we went right through the sequence of colors twice. And it's like it's almost like a cliche in movie production jargon. You say, "Oh man, we got to goldenrod twice."
Yeah.
Goldenrod is like the fifth color. I think pink first, then blue. I can't remember.
I'm looking at the Writers Guild website. It lists them as white, blue, then pink, yellow, green, goldenrod, and apparently they've added a few more: buff, salmon, and cherry. So it can vary.
That's probably our fault. Yeah. The fact that we got to goldenrod twice. Right. I like to think we had an influence on. I don't know.
So did those changes mostly had to do with like cutting the budget, right? I mean, as far as like
certainly we need once we were into production, I think there were 4 or 5 drafts. If we look at it, there's development and there's production. Right. And in development, I think there were 5 drafts in total. The 3rd draft is essentially the one I published later. That was the draft that brought Kevin on board. That was the one that's the green light. And then drafts 4 and 5 were, there it is. God bless you.
Yeah. The Encyclopocalypse released version of the screenplay.
It's available on Amazon now, folks, or direct from Encyclopocalypse's website.
Is it still available in hardcover also?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm having trouble finding mine, so that I might just have to buy it again.
Well, you never have to buy it again, right? It's the same fucking book. But yeah, they got hardcover, regular trade paperback, and I think they've still got the mass market paperback. That's that one, right?
Yeah, the tiny one, my favorite.
The cute one, the ones that for people my age is what paperback should look like.
You can just put on your shirt pocket.
Well, that's why that company was called Pocketbooks, because the theory was, I don't know about the shirt pocket, but certainly the jeans back pocket.
The back pocket. Yeah. That's right. For
sure. So 3rd draft was, the good one. The first 2 drafts, there was a whole sort of weird other thing where Jack Merchant had this best friend who came back as an angel, as a sort of counter to Pinhead. And I can't remember why we thought that was a good idea or what the hell I did with it, but we dumped that shit by the time we got to...
Jack is the little boy?
Oh, then John. Sorry, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Thank God we've got an expert here, because
I can't remember what the kid's name was.
No, I think you're exactly right. I think that's right. John is the... Philip's the 18th century. John's... Who's the one on the space station then?
Oh, hang on. On the space station is Paul. Paul?
Paul. Okay, so they're all.
I should remember this.
So we got Philip, John, and Paul.
Oh,
wow.
There you go.
Interesting.
I should have made Philip George. Then it would have been a little Beatles.
I was reading. I know that you included a few names of dog company people like Rimmer and in some of the Space Marines that enter.
Yeah.
But then I was reading Paul Kane's Hellraiser films and their legacy, where he mentioned something about Carducci, and Carducci would have in one of the drafts there would be a Carducci in space in the future segment, and he says possibly a descendant of Mama Carducci. Who was Mama Carducci? Do you remember that? Because I was confused about that, because I didn't remember there being a character called Mama Carducci, so I thought it might have been like a reference to something.
No, but I mean, I wonder if Paul, who
there we go,
whose knowledge of the Hellraiser films is certainly more encyclopedic than mine.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I'd be very surprised, because Carducci, well, this is sad, but I mean, he's specifically a reference to a friend of mine who killed himself, Mark Carducci, the creator of Pumpkinhead.
There you go.
Oh.
And
I see.
put Carducci in a couple of things. Mark died in 1997. My God, I can't believe it's that long ago.
Yeah.
And... yeah, so the Carducci that I put in the reference was entirely,
About
my
Mark.
friend's name.
Gotcha,
So
gotcha.
Okay.
I'm not sure who Mama Carducci was. Only that Carducci is, I won't say, it's not like Smith or Jones in terms of being a common Italian name, but it's not an uncommon Italian name. And that would be really odd if somewhere there was a Mama Carducci in Clive's work.
Right, I'm not sure.
What Paul is referring to.
Yeah, he was referring
because Clive
to
could well have the name.
Yeah, I think he was talking about how Corinne Cotton would be a descendant of Kirsty Cotton, and that was one of the characters who
got. I
got
wanted to imply.
cut. Yeah. And then there was something here talking about Carducci, and then said something like Carducci, possibly a descendant of Mama Carducci. So I was like, who's Mama Carducci? I never really got that reference. So I guess he might have been thinking about something else and probably attached that.
Him. And that's also today is Paul Kane's birthday. So happy birthday, Paul Kane.
It is Paul's birthday. That's right. I sent him Facebook greetings
Shadow Rider
an hour ago.
Yeah.
Cool. But yeah, so this brings the notion that there was a continuing thread throughout these old segments and a continuing thread throughout the other three movies. You guys had like Corinne Cotton was going to be one of the administrators of the Minos space station working with Dr. Merchant in the future. So those characters were the ones that started getting the cut as the drafts moved on, right?
Yeah, although I think Corinne is still in the movie, right? She's the main ally of Paul, or is that?
Well, she becomes Rimmer.
That's Rimmer, yeah.
Which initially was a male character, and then she became Rimmer.
I really should watch this movie. So,
it's been 30 years.
Yeah. It has been 30 years.
Well, and it was neat watching your.
But I'm pretty sure Carducci is still in the movie because he is. Yeah, in the sort of weird Venn diagram world.
Isn't he the guy that gets killed in the mirror?
Yes, I think so.
I think that's him.
Yeah.
And he was played by a friend of mine. I didn't know this at the time, but my friend Rich Nathanson said, "Hey, my friend is playing." And what was weird is I then told Rich that the character was named after Mark Carducci, who Rich had known briefly, but Rich had been close friends with Mark's brother Steve. And in fact, for a while, Rich and I referred to Steve and Mark as Dooch West and Dooch East, because Steve had stayed in New York and Mark was out in California. Which, Dooch West, Dooch East. We'd have to correct ourselves. Well, Dooch West or Dooch East? Oh, no, Dooch East. It
was fun
to talk. I like it.
It was fun listening to your audio commentary with Stephen Jones and Kim Newman, because it felt like one of our podcasts that we have with you. It was less about like paying super close attention to the movie and more telling stories and people's. It was neat though. They were, as they were watching it, they're like, hey, this is a lot better than I remembered.
Yeah,
I think both Kim Newman and Stephen Jones were saying that. Yeah.
And of course, Stephen Jones and his encyclopedic knowledge of Hellraiser, all things Hellraiser. He's the perfect guy to be there.
Yeah.
Because
Stephen Kim did commentary on all four, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
They've got some interesting material in the disc as well. This is the disc.
So many extras. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's the disc number 4. And there's a particular featurette that is pretty interesting because it really gets into the whole spirit of the thing. Yeah. It's that called The Beauty of Suffering. I don't know if you had a chance to look at that one, but that
would require me to still have a physical DVD player. What century do you people live in?
That's right. Now everything is streaming.
Hey, I've been buying laser discs lately. I'm up to about 60 of them now.
Oh, really?
Because I sold them all off when I was younger, and now I want them back.
Yeah, I have a laser disc of. I think I've got lasers of all 3 that I wrote. I've certainly got a laser of Wishmaster and of Hellbound. And I guess I don't have a laser player anymore, but I've still got the the physical discs. I used to have a lot of lasers, and I gave them all away to my dear late friend Dennis Etchison, who was psychotically convinced that lasers come back. That eventually, and he kept saying, well, vinyl came back.
It did.
And I think Laserdiscs came back as DVDs, right? I mean, I think that was kind of the end of once DVDs came out.
There was no explaining this to Dennis, and it was like, oh my God, I've made the mistake of cranking him up, because as soon as you said anything like that, he would tirelessly explain to you that, well, no, you see, the thing is, laser is actually an analog medium. It is not a digital video disc like a DVD. And it's like, I don't care. That's telling me. But he was Laserdisc. So my entire Laserdisc collection was donated to the Etchison archives.
There you go.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, talking about old formats, I still have like this VHS tape with Boogeyman, where it's got clips of movies. This is the most useless thing I ever bought, but it's so much fun to just watch this. It just takes me back to the 90s were such a great decade for horror. It's
that
like
would totally be a YouTube video now if they made it now.
Yeah, right. That's exactly what it would be. But they spent money on that thing.
Yeah, they did.
They did weird. They were like press junkets. I remember doing at least 3 events. I mean, not just like show up and talk to a reporter. I did 3 events with Kane Hodder and Robert Englund. Which was great, you know, because they'd both been in Wishmaster, and so it was great to see them again. But these were like junkets with food and drink, and 20 journalists moved in, and all for this bizarre clip compendium, you know, which they did a fine job on it, but it was like, why are you spending this kind of promotional money? You know, I'm enjoying the free food while I'm saying this, but I'm thinking this is strange. But
well, obviously people would buy it. You know, you make it, they will come. For some people, this could become the introduction to a lot of series they had never gotten into. And, you know, I mean, the anthology genre is just such a gateway to so many, for me, anthologies of horror and science fiction put me in contact with writers that became, you know, on my pantheon of authors.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So it makes sense that video anthologies would do the same kind of effect.
Yeah. Right. You're right.
But yeah, so, you know, this is the 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray. They've got one feature called The Beauty of Suffering.
Yes.
Right.
Which finally someone gets it. Finally someone gets what's at the essence of Hellraiser, right? Of the Cenobites, and how
like they it was 90% talking about S&M and 10% Hellraiser.
Well, and a lot of it is like how these people got influenced.
I apologize to all the lovely people that worked on the extras, all of whom were great, and I'm sort of social media friends with lots of them now. And they're from this sort of like, if a literary or film generation is 10 years, these people are at least 3 generations younger than we are. So it was great that they brought all these people in to do these specials. But I lose track of who did which. So does it have the credited names there on Beauty of? Is that Paula and Erik, or is that George? And
I'll give a little intro to what this is about. So the Beauty of Suffering is a feature where they go into goth fetish community and the influence of Cenobites on a generation of people.
Sure.
We've got people like a guy called Dave Edmund, who's a cinematographer and Dom. We have Jo Weldon, who is an author and a performer. She's like a dominatrix. She talks about.
Those were the 2 main narrators for the thing.
That's right. And there's another
one
back
that and forth between the 2
in full Cenobite regalia called Ricardo Castro, who's an event organizer, and they're basically just talking about how, you know, in Britain, you know, back in the late 80s, early 90s, they got exposed to stuff like Hellraiser, and these subcultures would embrace that and incorporate that into their, rave culture, party culture, BDSM, fetish culture, which makes sense because this, of course, would appeal to that side of our psyche that would appeal to people who are familiar with that. I mean, Clive himself kind of inspired himself for the Cenobites through watching Piercing Fans International Quarterly.
My God, that magazine.
I know.
Yeah.
And I think Jane Wildgoose was the one who designed some of the.
Been with us from Dog Company days.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, she was. I trust this is not ghost naming. She was Jane Woodward when we worked with her in Dog Company. She wasn't a performer, but she was a great. She was a designer and maker of clothes and costumes. But she went under her own name, Jane Woodward, and I guess by the time she worked with the Cenobites, she had become Jane Wildgoose. But I still default to Jane Woodward.
Yeah.
In my head.
And then I think in actually making the outfits, I think that might have been Rose Sylvester in Image Animation. I think she was the one who actually made the suits. And so this feature has people who obviously, were really influenced by the Cenobites. And I guess when you think about British culture at the time, there's always been a lot of repression, not just particularly in British culture, but, Victorian era really did a number on British society with all the repression and stuff. So when I guess it would create this subculture of people who just wanted to break free of these norms that were always like very strict, very like put on your uniform to go to school. Everybody has to look the same. If they could make you all the same height, they would make you all the same height. Right.
Yeah. They had a really interesting point also in this special about influence, right? That it's kind of a chicken and egg thing, that Hellraiser was influenced by this community, but it also really influenced the community after the first 4 Hellraiser movies came out.
Like a feedback loop. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I the big influence on that, and you're absolutely right, it is chicken and egg. The culture gave Clive some imagistic ideas, and then the release of the movie fed back into the culture and allowed for Halloween costumes at the very least, if not whole lifestyle choices. But I would say it was really the first movie that did that. Obviously the Cenobite aesthetic we carried on through the next 3 theatrical movies, the ones I wrote, and I assume kind of continued into the direct-to-video sequels, which, as you know, I famously have not watched.
Right.
But I really think it was the first one that cemented that through line from the culture to the movie back into the culture. Because I think, for whatever reason, my fault or the changes we were making to the franchise as it went on, we didn't concentrate on the look and the implication of the Cenobites. I mean, obviously it was there as an aesthetic to be picked on, and there were certainly some fabulous looking Cenobites and I'm not talking about myself. I'm primarily talking about Valentina, for example, in Bloodline. Gary Tunnicliffe's design, and she looks fantastic. Princess Angelique as a Cenobite is a great one, but I don't want to claim any credit I don't deserve. I'm saying that I think the first movie really established that. I don't want to shortchange the culture by using shorthands like the SM culture, whatever, goth SM, the whole crossover thing. I think the real through line there is from the first movie, and then we dilettantes flirted with it in the subsequent movies, but we were moving on to look at other obsessions in a way.
Of course, Hellraiser 3 kind of reflects a little more like maybe Tony Hickox's sensibility, more rock and roll vibe.
Oh, in terms of the take and the tone, sure.
Yeah. And then I think the fourth really goes back more to the gothic kind of.
Well, it reflects Alan Smithy's sensibility.
Right.
Right. When you have an auteur of such a long-standing vision.
That's right. How old is Alan Smithy now? He must be over 100.
Yeah.
Yeah. He might be retired. The
Guess we'll find out.
The retirement home up in Woodland Hills. I think I heard they'd found him a cabin there. I'll go check.
I think I remember reading something that there's a new name now instead of Alan Smithy, but I don't think people do that anymore. Even I think they just
because it's like with the internet, everyone's going to know.
That's right.
Did you one thing that they mentioned in this, also in this, The Beauty of Suffering, that I thought was kind of interesting, and it never occurred to me before, is that people feel like they have representation from the Cenobites, like piercing, enthusiasts and stuff like that. Sure. They feel represented, which is like,
that's great.
Wow, it's I never would have thought of it like that, but that's a good point.
Right. Well, that's it's so odd and so heartwarming that cultures that, how would I put this, that have an assertive visual presence. Let's say that. I was going to say aggressive, but I want to be careful. Have an assertive visual presence. Yeah. Nevertheless, we all want to feel the comfort of home in a weird way, and that was very touching to me. That like the weirdest looking fans can come up at conventions who are just fucking sweethearts. And you look at them, male or female, multi-studded, multi-pierced, and you'd think, Christ, if it was midnight, I was on the tube, I'd be terrified. And then they're sweet people, and they do feel this sense of, you make us feel that there's a home base here for us, which is which is nice.
It's also the
freedom of self-expression.
Sure.
And it's interesting how things change over time. Like growing up, I remember people saying, if you ever get, my dad, if you get a tattoo, you'll never get a job. And it's like now almost everybody has tattoos, and it's not that big of a deal.
That's right.
Yeah, well, wait till they're 80. It's a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. You're going to be, if you want to dig ditches.
Right.
That's right.
That was my dad's thing. I was always going to be a ditch digger.
I mean, it was the Navy, basically. I mean, when I was a kid, it was like, if you had a tattoo, it meant you'd been in the. I know that is not literally true, obviously. But the active cultural assumption was sailors had anchors or cute girls in grass skirts.
Right.
And only sailors had those.
Or if you're in Japan, you're Yakuza, if you have a tattoo.
Right. Well, yeah. Although when I was 7, 8, 9, I didn't know that because we didn't know about other cultures.
Right.
You were listening to the Mercicipians.
Right.
There you go. But yes, so that's an interesting little feature there. You brought up Valentina Vargas as Angelique, and of course we know that it was Gary that created the design that we ultimately came to love. But when you were writing this stuff, what were you visualizing when you saw the movie? Was it kind of what you expected, or did you have anything in mind particularly?
Before I saw the movie, obviously, because I'd known Gary for years. By the time. Certainly by the time of Bloodline, but I think even by the time of Hell on Earth, because I'd had the experience on Hellbound, I knew that image animation were fantastic. And I think again, I might be retro engineered in my head, but I think in the script for Hellbound. Well, it wasn't so much an issue in Hellbound because the Cenobites were established. The four, other than Channard, we knew what the Cenobites, the four, the OGs, the Fab Four,
The Fab
were.
Four.
So I didn't need to describe them in the script. And then I think I did describe Channard and what happened to him. And I'm trying, certainly by the time of Hellraiser 3, I think I'd come to the realization of just say they're Cenobites, unless there's some specific shit you want to, for thematic reasons.
Exactly.
Because the lads will come up with something much better in terms of the look than anything I could think of. I suspect probably in 3, especially because of the pseudo Cenobite thing, there might have been a little more looks like this. But by Bloodline, I think I was literally just using the phrase, Angelique steps out, period. She has been Cenobitized, period.
Right.
I certainly, the whole
so you were leaving behind space for the special effects, like whether Gary or
because they're all, those guys are brilliant. Know, Bob and Jeff, I don't want to miss any of them out. I mean, primarily Bob and Jeff on the first couple, and then obviously Gary took over, and I went right through all the DTV sequels as well, long after the rest of us had bailed. Gary's the guy who has applied the pinhead makeup more than anybody else, which leads to internet wars between him and Jeff Portas because of Jeff's original design application. But the thing is, they're all really fucking good.
Did you ever
all of them? Cliff Wallace, Mark Coulier, Paul Jones, Martin Mercer. I don't. Steve Painter. Now I feel obliged to mention every single member of Image Animation that I met, but they're all Little John. Jesus Christ. They're all really, really good at that. So it wasn't a case of I didn't care or was getting lazy. It was like, it's like if you're in a band, and the other musicians are good, you don't need to orchestrate their parts. It's like, write the song and assume the guitar player is going to do this blinding riff to introduce it. So I could get to the part where a Cenobite would step out of a mirror, and it's like, I wonder how good this will look, but I know it'll look good. So obviously, just to go back to how you phrased the question, I was like, obviously, long before I saw the movie, I'd seen, obviously, Valentina on set. I'd been in the room when Gary was applying it. So, and it's not like the other makeups weren't great too. Of course they were. I just thought the combination of Valentina's beauty and performance and Gary's design, it was like, oh, that one's another classic. But no insult to me, CD head and camera head, or anybody else from the later movies. But it was like, I really felt when I saw that one, it was like, oh yeah, that's she'll get on the cover of the magazine.
Yes.
Remember that.
And that kind of is what my question is. When you're thinking about sequels and you're thinking and you're writing them, do you how do I put this? I'm thinking of like, so the Cenobites, right? The Cenobites continued from Hellraiser 1 to 2, with an actor change, but then from 2 to 3 they were all gone except for Pinhead, and then from 3 all the ones from 3 disappeared, and you had a new cast of Cenobites in 4. So I guess my question is there was it just like, this is an interesting direction, I want to see what new designs they come up with, or is it that did you have a story reason why the Cenobites from Hellraiser 3 didn't come back for 4?
Well, they were just punks, right? They were just pseudo Cenobites. they weren't the real thing. I mean, actually, one of the things that was really sweet in the thing you mentioned earlier, Jose, the marvelous video thing about the origin of Barbie, they say we assume that Barbie and CD head and camera head, and I guess by extension,
And the
piston head and
piston,
smoker, all went to hell, where the true Cenobitization would continue.
Yeah.
And I guess. I mean, I hadn't given it that much thought.
It just disappeared off the script, you know. That's
I always wonder, is does Pinhead, so you know what, today I think I want you and you and you to come with me.
Well, I think that there's story logic for it in 3, without doubt, because he's on Earth, he's disconnected, he's no longer the soul of Elliot. Spoilers, the soul of Elliot Spencer has been separated from him, so he literally makes his own, what's his phrase, handmade shadows of my
but they got sent to hell at the end.
I probably wasn't thinking that through, because I guess what would really happen is they'd just be killed, because they weren't true Cenobitic creatures. They didn't have those powers. It's a fantasy, people. We make the rules up as we go along. But yes, they did disappear the way the original Cenobites disappear. Blue light, early CGI blue light, everything was blue. Do you remember in the 90s? Blue light everywhere. So they did disappear in the traditional Cenobite goes back to hell way. So yes, there is indeed a visual implication that now they're going to go to hell. And, fingers crossed, we all graduated and became real Cenobites. But so that was the story reason in Hellraiser 3. In Bloodline, there was the whole, as messed about by the weird editing of the final release cut. I've totally lost track of what that sentence was. As messed about as it got by the re-edit for the theatrical release, there was meant to be a whole through line of the nature of hell and the changing nature of hell, and who was in charge of hell and its aesthetics and why. So that was specific, thematic and narrative for. Angelique predates the Cenobites. She's a demon when hell didn't have Cenobites. Now, I know in the comic books there's all kinds of ancient historical Cenobites, but the movies come first, So as the canon was established when we were doing it, and I'm all for changing afterwards, but Cenobites only came about because of the box. They are a post-lament configuration phenomenon. So Angelique was an old school demon and was a princess of hell and intended to continue to be a princess of hell. She commissioned and created the box, little knowing that it would be, in a way, her own undoing when she was kept, because she was away from hell and kept as a sex slave by Jacques, Adam Scott, folks.
Now in Severance.
Severance.
I love that
back
show.
To the genre. Exactly. He went off for a while to do sitcoms and drama, but now back to the genre. So, and in the interim, everything we had come to know as the Cenobitic aesthetic had become dominant in hell, and Pinhead's in charge. Leviathan's in charge, but Pinhead's his 4-star general. So it was meant to be a sort of visual representation of the changing order, that it was like, oh my God, she's not in charge anymore. And as visual proof as well as emotional proof of that, she's a Cenobite. She is, I mean, Valentina has so much swag that she doesn't really play it as if she's subservient to Pinhead, but clearly we know from the other movies Pinhead's in charge. So as great looking as the Princess Cenobite is, she's subservient to and so that was meant to be particularly and narratively clear that there had been a change. I think some of the lines still survive. I think Pinhead has that thing where he says to her, hell is more ordered
and much less amusing.
Much less amusing.
Yes.
Which is like a reference to the clowns, right?
That's why this.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess specifically clowns, but just the fact that I don't know. I guess in my head, the pre-Cenobite hell would be a little more 18th century. You know, it would be a little more witty and charming. To be seems to be adjectives you wouldn't necessarily apply, but there was a sort of game playing Mephistophelian notion of what demons were and what hellish creatures were. And this is Pinhead's reminder of, no, we're fucking Nazis now.
Yeah.
More ordered, less amusing, and really cool uniforms.
That's why it's so important to read this.
Indeed it is, Joe.
The original screenplay that you called it, I believe you said was the third or draft or whatever, because
the third draft,
you really get a bigger sense of the story arc for Angelique. Sure. Because in the Workprint, which is another of the things that is in this disc, we never get to see that. I don't think, or at least in this script, if we go by this script, the reason why Jacques brings a street urchin to meet, the Count Delisle, was kind of a way to replace.
Don't demote him, Joe. Duke Delisle.
Duke Delisle. There you go.
Not
That's
really
right.
A count.
But originally in the script, Princess Angelique would be fully formed, summoned by Duke Delisle.
Yeah, the street urchin was again, I know all your viewers already know this, but you know, there was a reshoot that was involved some new pages written by Rand Ravitch and directed by Joe Chappelle.
That's right.
And this street urchin origin of Angelique came from that. There was never any. Angelique was a timeless demon who'd always been a demon in my head and in my version.
Right. And what's confusing?
That's a good scene. I mean, I'm not knocking the scene in the movie.
Oh, sure. It brings it more as a possession kind of scene rather than just summoning the demon. Yeah. But I would argue that it was confusing when we see the Workprint, because then we have the script. She gets summoned, right? And she gets taken from hell by Duke Delisle, and she gives the plans. She tells him to create this box so she can overcome anybody who tries to stand in hell's way.
Right.
The people, right.
Right.
And then the people.
Can I just join the dots in that just in case?
Yes.
I mean, again, I know we've got a hardcore audience here who probably know all this anyway, but it was the theory was dating back all the way back to Dr. Faustus, Marlowe's Faustus. The theory was that, like, if you could summon a demon, you foolishly as a human thought you had some kind of control over the demon. And I did give Delisle these lines, remember, Jacques, he who summons the magic commands the magic.
Right.
And Angelique's plan all along was to, if this bastard brings me up out of a pentagram with words of ancient Phoenician, I do have to do it's like a genie from a bottle. I do have to do what he says.
Right.
The notion of creating the box was, this is just some idiot can open this fucking thing and then boom, we've got him and we're in charge. So that was the theory. And I'm not sure that through line is clear at all in frankly, either the Workprint or the theatrical.
Correct. Yeah, because
Jack gets to keep her because the old rules still apply there. He summons her, I assume off screen, I can't remember.
That's right.
In the old way through the pentagram and the spell casting. So she's owned by him.
Because that's one of the things
sorry, that was just trying to join the dots there. But
no, sure. That was my follow through. Actually, I was going to go through that because in the movie, like when people see the movie, either the Workprint or the final version, it's like, it's unclear if Duke Delisle is the one who summoned her and then he gets killed. Then why is transfer? That it's missing. The part that's missing. It's the part that Delisle would. There was a lot more explanation to Angelique's plan and why she opposes Pinhead, and also a little more tragedy to the fact that she's trying to break out from being a slave, and she ends up a slave to the Hell Priest again.
Fucking patriarchy, man.
I know,
come on,
right?
it is an early example of female empowerment in horror movies, and I need my feminist medal for yeah,
absolutely. But yeah, once you
kidding.
start taking out those scenes from this original script, it just starts falling apart pretty quickly. Even though some people might not even be aware of it, they might not have even thought about it. They're like, oh yeah, I guess he was the wizard's apprentice, so now he gets to keep the demon. But it's like, no, because it makes no sense. He didn't summon the magic. So of course, yeah, if you read this, it makes a whole lot more sense. And this is the bloodline that we never had, and it would have been a tremendous movie.
Thanks.
The idea was originally, you and Clive were talking about starting this in Victorian London, right? But then I think you came up with the idea of bringing the Le Marchands into the family history, and that's why it moved to France.
Yes, exactly right. It was the note. Well, first of all, and again, I probably said this. I've certainly said this in some interviews, and I probably said it with you guys when we've talked about stuff in the past. I'll try and summarize it. Back in the, franchises hadn't really established themselves. I mean, Universal had sequels to their movies. Hammer had sequels to their movies. And I guess Nightmare on Elm Street, there'd been 2 or 3 of them by the time we were working. Halloween had several. But the assumption that a horror movie spawns a franchise, up to like 10 sequels, 12 sequels, really was not the norm. So we really thought, 3 and done. Because I guess the phrase a trilogy, that existed.
Yeah, sure.
So we thought Hellraiser,
like Star Wars at the time.
So when Miramax did say, closing the circle, and right back to your first question, Joe, when somewhere in that missing 4 years on that strange timeline, they said we want to do Hellraiser 4. Clive and I both had a sort of, well, there's nothing to tell, really. We've wrapped it up.
It's the 4th movie.
Yeah, right. So it was always conceived that it would be, what we genuinely thought was, well, this really will be it. I mean, obviously there's not going to be anything after this one. So the theory was that we wanted something that would really wrap the movie up, both in the literal sense and in the metaphoric of wrapping it with a prequel and a sequel, so that in a way Hellraiser 1, 2, and 3 occurs between Act 1 and Act 2 and 3 of Bloodline.
We kind of bookend the mythology at the beginning and the end.
That was the word I was desperately trying to remember. Bookend. Yes.
Yeah,
exactly. Would bookend the existing trilogy. And Clive definitely was the guy who said, oh, well, 3 time periods. We can do 3 different things, past, present, future. And so obviously present was always going to be present, and future was always going to be space, however silly that sounds. But yes, his first idea was, and it'll be like a Jack the Ripper riff. We'll do Victorian London. And I can't remember if it was, I could try and make myself look super smart by saying right at that moment, I knew Victorian London was, I think it was probably, it wasn't right then. I think I thought about it. And so, within a day or two, I said, because Clive obviously had used the phrase and the name Le Marchand in the Hellbound Heart in the novella. So my twist on his notion of the 3 time periods was to say, why don't we do 18th century France, do the boxmaker story, and the protagonist of the other 2 can be their descendants, like the bloodline of the Le Marchand family. And Clive's like, that's the title. And I said, what is? And he said, Bloodline. You just said it.
There you go.
And I had not had not been saying it. I was literally saying, yeah, the bloodline goes through.
Yeah.
And when he said that's the title, I didn't immediately think, oh, yes, you're right, that's great. But I thought it was okay. I thought, oh yeah, Bloodline, okay. It's got blood in, so it sounds horror-ish. But yes, so that was the notion. That was always going to be the notion. And that remained consistent right through the script, including the shooting script. And it was only in post-production that Bob Weinstein, to be fair to him, after a couple of focus group screenings in which people said, where's Pinhead, for the first 40 minutes, then Bob shit himself and said, we've thrown our monster away. And that was why, that was what prompted the re-edit. And I know that Kevin and me, and probably Clive as well, have spent the subsequent 30 years bad-mouthing Bob Weinstein for that. It's like, in retrospect, not that I agree with the decision, but I understand how he came to that decision, because we'd been wrapped up, I think, in our little Hellraiser world, because, the movies had been hits, not huge hits, but very profitable for the studios, because they're so cheap. And there was a growing fan base, and inevitably you can get very insular and isolationist, and we thought, well, everybody understands the Hellraiser mythos, everybody understands the Hellraiser universe, so we can do this. We can spend 35 minutes in the 18th century without Pinhead, because our fans will understand what we're doing. They'll know where we're heading with this. And we were wrong, in the sense that you got to remember that most members of an audience, most horror movie fans, are not necessarily Hellraiser fans. And the core audience, certainly in the 90s, for horror movies were, well, teenagers or young adults, teens and 20s date night movies.
Right.
It was like, they weren't fully committed Hellraiser scholars who could name every Cenobite and all this. It was like,
Mom and Dad were not watching Hellraiser Bloodline at the theater.
Right. It was they want to date night on Saturday. Let's go see a horror movie, because horror movies are always great date night movies, because you scream and hold each other tight.
Oh yes.
That'd be interesting to know how many
regular people who all they know is, Hellraiser, that's the guy with the pins, right?
Yeah.
So when you have the test screenings are not 40 Hellraiser fans. Right. They're 40 regular people. So, this is a very long-winded way of saying we got a little lost. I'd still much rather that was the movie we had made, of course.
Yeah.
But I do now, in retrospect, understand that it was like, to people who just went in, I guess now why the focus group card said, where the fuck is the guy with the pins? It's like, I guess you can't really go 40 minutes without showing them Freddy, or showing them Jason, or showing them Michael Myers, or showing them Leatherface.
At least the guy who wrote the card knew the guy with the pins in his head. I mean, so
I wonder how many people, it would be really interesting to know how many people going into Hellraiser Bloodline were people that had never seen a Hellraiser movie before.
Oh,
quite a few, I would think, because despite its rapid plummet in week 2, Bloodline had the biggest opening of any Hellraiser date. I mean, it wasn't like,
I could see that,
A movie openings, but it was, in fact, how quickly
it was still coasting. It was still coasting a little bit on Hellraiser 3. Yeah.
Well, but Harvey and Bob were so happy. The first, Harvey. Well, we won't talk about Harvey, but
let's talk about Bob, who called you the Shakespeare of horror.
Yeah. They took out a full-page ad in Variety Um, Variety, again, I know most of your audience know this, was now it's just some general interest movie magazine. But back then it was the trade press. It was like Publishers Weekly is for writing.
It was an industry.
Like Billboard is for the music industry. It's an industry paper, not a civilians paper.
Right.
And so it was always a big deal to get, name checked in Variety. So they took out this full page color ad in Variety with Pinhead's face flipped from the poster. Biggest Hellraiser opening ever, which was, by the way, 6 million. It wasn't like anything that would sound good by today's standards. And then, Miramax and Harvey and Bob Weinstein would like to thank, and they listed us all there, my name, Clive's name, Doug's name, because they thought they had a hit on their hands, and then it plummeted. So to answer your question, Ryan, my guess is if that had the biggest Hellraiser opening ever, it stands to reason that half the people that went in were possibly seeing a Hellraiser movie for the first time. We can't be sure of that because obviously all the previous movies were now very available on VHS.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So they could well have seen those movies on home video, but we don't know that. And the odds are there was a bunch of people who didn't certainly weren't fully au fait with the Hellraiser mythos. But that's not why the figures went down the following week. The figures went down the following week because it's a bad movie. It's a mess.
Yeah.
I know there are pleasures to be had in the movie, but that's why. In fact, actually, I'm already changing my mind. Given that we did get the biggest opening ever, and then it went down, I'm disagreeing with myself. You might have a point, Ryan. I think probably it was like, oh yeah, this was more. This was the other movies had built up, and now we suddenly get the new Hellraiser's coming out. Let's go to, oh my God, what is this? So word of mouth killed it, unfortunately. Again, I'm theorizing, as we all do. You never know.
Yeah.
But
nobody's handing out a survey, to everybody going into the theater. Yeah.
Also, you have to consider what other movies were coming out at the time. I mean, 96 was a movie where Scream came out. Was a year with Scream or The Craft, The Frighteners, Dusk Till Dawn, and maybe things were changing a little bit. Like X-Files was really big, so people were more into mystery and stuff like that. So who knows? Maybe it was just the zeitgeist was changing, or there were other movies that kind of killed it. So I still enjoyed a lot. Of course, I'm biased towards that because I feel like those 4 movies, this box set here for me, it's like the definitive Hellraiser fans should get that. One thing that always annoyed me was the way that people are dismissive when it comes to a horror movie that takes place in space. They always bring up that little thing like, so they didn't know what to do with it, so they went into space, like Leprechaun in space.
Leprechaun,
or Jason X in space.
Those
all this
are the
stuff.
2 other obvious ones, right?
But when you brought. Yeah, but when you were talking about the 3 time periods, it just seems like going into space was just the natural progression of like, of course, we're going to be talking about the future. In the future, mankind is going to space. It wasn't put as a trope to be like, let's put them in space because we don't know what to do with it, right?
Right.
So it's always been dismissive of people to say, well, they don't know what to do with it. They're going to put it in space. So maybe.
I agree.
You're right. But of course, it's not like... it's not like it hadn't already been very firmly established by Alien that you can have a horror movie in space.
Yeah.
So the notion of going to space is a silly thing to do with a horror movie or a franchise. Well, that's not. And then, Event Horizon came out a year later.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like, and I'm sure other people thought it because I thought it was like, oh shit. This is Hellraiser in space.
It was.
This is a better version of Hellraiser in space. And I think Bob worked on that, right? Bob Keane, I think.
Possibly. I don't know. So. I'm not sure who did the effects for Event Horizon, but I can look that up real quick.
Isn't that like another movie where people have been angling to try to get a director's cut and they just can't get it together?
Oh, I think there was.
I think there is something.
People on how? I mean, Event Horizon. People like it, don't they? I mean,
they like it, but there's this rumor of a more extreme version that's out there that had to get censored.
Oh yeah, it's when you're talking about is the part where there's like these video logs from what happened to the original crew, and there was stuff that was cut because it was deemed too extreme. But I think you can still find that as extras and stuff. So, but I like that movie a lot, and I do remember being part of the Hellraiser community that it was unanimously like adopted by the community as like this is the Hellraiser we wanted to see in space, and I even remember in the old Hellbound web forums, which don't exist anymore, but someone had photoshopped Sam Neill's character in Event Horizon with like a Cenobite outfit. It was perfect. It was just perfect. But yeah, so the work print is really cool. I think people should also check that out, even though it doesn't represent still not as close as your version that should have been made. It's still in some ways a little better in certain aspects. I mean, I one thing I didn't understand was why they decided to go with that street urchin being possessed by the demon instead of the whole gambler scene that apparently was completely filmed. It just was missing the effects. Maybe the effects budget was the thing they kind of had it cut. But I think that scene would have been
that was all. A lot. I mean, Kevin had walked by trying to think. Yeah, you're right. All the master shots and the straight actor shots had been done for that sequence.
And then it eventually just ended up being a few little things on the trailer and a few little clips of that when poor Marchand is looking into the window and seeing.
Right.
Yeah.
Is the whole... Does Angelique... I can't... Because I know there are two. There's the grey market work print that's been knocking around for a long time.
Yeah.
And then there's the grey market work print plus animations that where somebody has animated...
Like a previs kind of thing. I think I know what you're talking about. I'm not super familiar with that one, but I know that it was made a few years ago.
Right. And then there's the work print on the disc.
That's right.
And I can't... Do they include the whole Angelique teases the gamblers and makes them play with the box?
Yes. Yes.
I know. I've seen that.
Front half of the sequence in there.
Yeah, she makes the thing where she's like, every time you solve a part of the box, I'll remove a piece of garment, and they're like, "Oh yeah," So, so that it's just such a good sequence, and I really wish that they had kept that in the final movie. But now you can still enjoy it in the work print.
Yes,
those are the kinds of movies that need to be remade, right? The ones that were messed up by studios, and although they probably don't, remaking a Hellraiser 4 probably is not ever going to happen.
Installment of a minor franchise.
Yeah, it's never going to happen.
It's just a fantasy, but it would be nice.
But again, I keep pointing at this book, but yes, you guys need to get the screenplay by Peter Atkins.
Yeah. You can't get the director's cut, but you can get the writer's cut. Yeah.
And then you did not return for the fifth one or any of the other ones, because not only were those, non-WGA, right? Non-union. So, obviously they were not going to be involved with that. But I think at that point, probably, were you still interested if they had said something? If it had been
no, to be honest. And the thing, because, we'd had a terrible experience with Bloodline. And the thing is, let me be very upfront about this. If I had been interested, Miramax were very not interested in me, because they retroactively blamed. I mean, I think they blamed Clive as well, but they knew Clive was a brand name, so they didn't want to.
Yes,
they wanted in a way to keep him sweet. Because I don't know, do they get to use the Clive Barker Presents?
I think they did for some of the sequels.
Direct to videos.
I don't know. I think not until the new 2022 one, I think.
Oh yeah, sure on that. Yeah. But I think on all the others, presumably still a based on characters created by credit somewhere on them.
Yeah,
I think
They didn't have a
that
Clive
is
Barker
there.
Presents.
Yeah.
No.
Right. So I guess they were mad at him too then. So, but yes, certainly
They just didn't want to pay him, I think, to put his name on the title.
Well, right, because there was so much budget was so much smaller that they weren't going to give him the big
yeah, the fifth and onwards is just based on characters created by Clive Barker.
Right.
So, and then there's a really cool documentary that they've included in this disc as well, which is called Hellraiser Evolutions, which apparently was made in 2015, and you feature in it.
I was interviewed for that. I don't know if I make the cut on this, but it was God, what's it? Creature Corner, Ryan. I'm going blank in my old age.
I think
Ryan Turek.
Oh, okay. Turek? Yeah, he was from. Yeah. Was he from Fangoria?
Yes. And wasn't he the producer or director of that Evolution?
I think so, but I mean, this interview, you don't really hear the interviewer's voice. You mostly just hear the voices of.
But he's not credited as a.
It says here that Hellraiser Evolutions was directed by Anthony Massey. And it said that it was actually made as an exclusive for Arrow Video Amazon channel. And then they've included that in this set. I'm not sure if it was ever released in any other Hellraiser disc. At least that's what I see here. And what's interesting,
it was the first time I'd ever seen it.
Yeah, me too. And I was fascinated that Stewart Gordon was in this. And then, of course,
he talk about it?
Yeah, he talked about it, which I at first was like, why is Stewart Gordon in this? And then I kind of was reading Paul's book and I was like, oh, because Stewart Gordon almost directed Hellraiser Bloodline.
Yeah.
And apparently it was almost all set to go, but then some creative differences he was not.
Yes. I mean, shorthand, yes.
Right.
It wasn't set to go and we'd never got to pre-production or anything.
Okay.
But
just talks.
He was about to be hired, is what it was. I'd had 2 or 3 meetings with him, which was great. You know, I was a huge Reanimator fan.
Oh yeah.
So I was thrilled to meet with him. And you know, I'm sure you guys and most of your audience knows, Stewart had started in theater as well. Mm-hmm. Clive Doug and I had, and was obviously a hardcore horror fan. So, in the same way that I'd been lucky to click with Tony Randall and Tony Hickox and Kevin in the future, and soon Robert Kurtzman, Stewart was another one where it was like, oh yeah, we're really from the same tribe. So we had a couple of great sessions. He liked the script. How do I know whether he was very complimentary about the script, very kind about the script. He had a couple of slightly odd ideas, I have to admit, in which he to bring in the notion of the Kabbalah as a sort of through line of Jewish mysticism. Thing.
Oh, that would have been interesting.
But I thought, okay. And I don't know if I'm telling tales out of school now, but I didn't have an objection to it. But I remember mentioning it. He asked how Clive said I was the meeting. I said, great. He's a great guy. We got on great. And I don't think I said, it in any poisoning way, but I might have said it in a puzzled way. I might have said, he's got this thing of like working all mysticism into the through line. Don't know about that. And I have no memory of Clive saying anything good, bad, or indifferent to it, but he had a kind of reaction. And the next thing I knew, Stewart was not being offered the movie. Now, as I say, I'm not telling tales out of school. I don't know, and Clive has never told me, if he then got on the phone to Miramax and said, no, Stewart Gordon. because I don't think it was a money thing. I don't think it was Miramax.
Okay.
Not
Okay.
offering.
That's
But for
interesting.
whatever
Never heard of that.
reason, the phone stopped. Oh, I was just about to use the phrase. I didn't know that then. I'd heard it wasn't going to happen. And then, God, at least 10 years later, I think, I was doing a signing at Dark Delicacies for something. And it was one of Dark Delicacies is the home of horror in Burbank, California, which for 30 years has been doing book signings and DVD signings and movie release,
Just for one more month, though.
Yeah, well,
That's
April.
right.
They're finally closing their doors in April.
And
because-
Dell is becoming an author now. He's releasing a
Dell
book.
already is.
Yes,
He's had a novel, and a couple of short stories. But yes, his collection comes out in a couple of weeks, I guess.
I think so. Yeah. We talked about it on our last episode.
Yeah, right. And I've known Dell and Sue pretty much since they opened. I think they've been open about a month. I moved here to LA in '92, and I think they opened in '93.
Oh, wow.
4 maybe.
He is also in the Hellraiser Evolutions documentary. He shows up mostly talking about the Cenobites and how he sees them as fallen angels in a way, which is a really nice way of putting it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Good. So there was a signing, and I forget what I was signing, and I forget what the other 3 people who were signing. But anyway, Stewart was going to be there. So, and I hadn't seen him since. And I sat down, we were next to each other by coincidence, and I sat down and said, Stewart, and I was about to say, I don't know if you remember me, but before I could say anything, as he shook my hand, he said, what the hell happened? And I said, oh, what do you mean? And he said, the phone just stopped ringing. What did I say? And I said, oh,
wow.
No,
So he didn't know
I
either.
wasn't
then.
doing the hiring, Stuart, but
yeah.
But yeah, so the sense I got, obviously he was just having fun, and
sure, just throwing ideas.
I can't say he literally, but the sense I got was that they didn't even formally say no. It was like, because what he literally said to me was, the phone just stopped ringing. Which, by the way, would be very typical of studio behavior.
Sure.
But unless there's a contract they need to break, they won't fucking call you. It's literally a case of the phone will just stop ringing. So after a couple of weeks, you think, oh, I guess I'm not doing that one, or I guess I didn't get that job. So as I say, I don't know for a fact that they didn't formally notify his agent getting the gig.
That was an interesting bit of insight.
I suspect he was probably literally telling the truth, that the phone just stopped ringing.
Yeah.
That's often how it happens.
And then I found out that in '99. Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say it was nice to see him again, because I hadn't seen him for several years. So it was nice that he held no grudge, and still mutual fans of all the shit we were mutual fans of. So it was great to see him again.
But he still had it in his mind. As soon as he saw you, it was like clicking on that.
Yeah, right.
And before we leave the topic of Dark Delicacies, you're going to be there tomorrow, which when we post this, it'll be today on Sunday, the 16th, right? You'll be there with the videotapes from hell.
By the time you post this, probably, right?
It'll be about 8 o'clock in the morning, Alaska time, if I can
get when it goes
done.
Up. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we might manage to encourage a couple of people to. Yes.
Yeah. Anybody in California should go there. I would totally go there if it wasn't thousands of miles away.
Yeah.
And get that wonderful videotapes from Hell book, because we talked about it.
That's what it is.
With Steven.
Specifically assigned for Steve Jones's.
I want to get a real copy of it. I just have the advanced reader,
Yeah, we got the Gale.
Yeah.
Oh, you did? You got an ARC? Virtual or print?
Virtual.
Virtual, yeah. I mean, and he told us it's not the same as holding it in your hands, because it's a really nice coffee table book.
It looks like such a beautiful book. It really is. And for anybody who collects VHS or wants to reminisce about some of the movies that you used to watch, it's a really great series of covers and analysis of what the genre and all that was.
Sure. I wonder if you can still order them from Dark Delicacies autographed and stuff and have them shipped.
This is a slightly sore point between Steve and Del and Sue at the moment
Oh.
because Steve's position, as you would expect from the editor of the book, is, well, they should have ordered more fucking copies. And Del and Sue's position,
Oh.
which is perfectly reasonable, as the people who have a brick and mortar business, is there's always this delicate thing. If you want to order as a bookseller literally enough copies that you sell them all. You
I,
don't want to
yeah.
order so few 40
That you're
people
stuck with
willing to give you
inventory.
their money and you
Yeah.
don't have the, yeah, and exactly,
Yeah.
Joe. And the other is you don't want to order 80 and only sell 40.
Yeah,
So yep,
that's a tough line to
yeah,
walk.
it is a
Yeah.
tough call. And Steve's position is understandable, and Del and Sue's position is understandable. And
Yeah.
as it happens, I think they pitched it pretty perfectly because if you are intending to come to the signing, you can still pre-order a book. They will hold a book for you. They have enough. If you wanted to get a signed copy but can't attend the signing,
Yeah.
they've already sold out. So
Oh,
sadly, you can't order signed copies from them because, but so there'll be a couple of copies left over physically tomorrow for walk-ins, but much as Steve is mad at them, I think that is testament to how accurately Del and Sue know their
oh, yeah.
audience and can
Yeah.
pitch it. So yeah, obviously, um, this you can show up for if anybody is to this, um, you can absolutely show up for the signing. There might be a couple of copies that haven't been pre-ordered available, but you can certainly join the line and get us all to sign your other crap. So, so feel free
Oh
to
my
come
gosh.
by.
I really wish I
Uh,
could come.
well,
And you know,
I'll ask Dylan Sue if I suspect they're telling the literal truth, and they
Yeah.
had,
of course.
whatever it is, 30 copies put aside for pre-order, non-attending. But I'll ask them tomorrow on your behalf, Ryan, if they've got one left dangling around that
Oh my
maybe
gosh, I would love that.
everybody can
Yeah.
scribble in,
But well,
then we'll
thank you.
do it.
I appreciate that.
But
I
I'll ask.
understand if
But
there's not any.
I can
Yeah.
already see the smug smile on Dell's face as he says, "No, we sold exactly the number of copies I thought we would." But
Yeah.
Yeah.
if he makes a mistake,
Yeah.
I'll see if we can grab one for you. But
I'm
yes,
really
it's a fun
partial to.
lineup. It's a bunch of people who have made a bunch of stuff in the 90s in
Yeah.
the glory days of VHS and stuff. I know there's 8 of us. I hope I'm going to remember everybody. There's me, Mick Garris, R.C. Matheson, Dave Scow, Courtney Joyner, Lisa Morton, Adam Simon, and Brink Stevens. Um,
Wow.
so that's quite a range of
Yeah.
types of movie,
Oh yeah.
and I can't speak for everybody else, though I sort of think I can. Obviously, if any of your listeners are able to come, I will of course sign anything else you bring, Hellraiser Wishmaster shit, and I'm guessing all the others
Yeah.
will too. Um, but I shouldn't speak for them, especially Brinky because she's an actor, and
Hmm.
now there's this whole other separate culture of what you pay for actors' signatures. Not
Oh
that
Sure.
she
yeah.
would charge to sign the book, of course she wouldn't.
Yeah.
But she might have some
Right.
Kool-Aid by 10 she wants to sell. But
Yeah.
any of us,
I don't know if I've told
young
you about
writers
this,
and
but
directors, we'll sorry,
I had a really nice experience with Dark Delicacies. I flew down there with a broken foot, and I pulled it up on my phone. I thought, oh, that looks really close on my GPS, right? This was in 2008.
yeah.
The signing for Midnight Meat Train movie, like
Huh?
they were signing movie posters. So I hobbled down on crutches for like 2 miles. I walked to Dark Delicacies, and when Dell heard about this, he gave me a special place to sit next to Clive Barker instead of standing in line,
Oh,
and
great.
he gave me a ride back to my hotel when the whole thing was over.
Oh, well,
What a mensch.
he's
Yeah,
not all
he's
bad,
such a
is he?
cool guy.
No,
Yeah,
no, Dell's great. I've been friends
yeah.
with him for 30 years, as I say. But that's great. I didn't know he did. That's very nice. Very nice that he did that.
He felt sorry for me.
Well,
So
he's a nice guy, and yeah, they're not. It's very sad news for all. I mean, especially because it's literally, as I say, I moved here a couple of years before they opened, but essentially, the same time span, and it's really been home base for horror people for 3 decades. All the people that are signing tomorrow, for example, we've all signed them multiple times, and we've attended other people's signings multiple times.
It's not
And
just a store. It's like
no, it's like
yeah,
it is the home of horror, which is what
yeah,
Del's mock creepy voice says on the phone. Welcome to Dark Delicacies, home of horror.
yes.
Please leave a message. But it is the home of horror. And I mean,
yeah,
certainly, if I'm in the neighborhood, whether there's an event, I'll always like park in front of DD and walk in and just shoot the shit with them. So it really
yeah,
will leave a hole in the
yeah,
Los Angeles horror community when they
yeah,
close. And I hadn't even realized nobody else does signings. Lisa Morton, who's former president of the Horror Writers Association and great writer in her own right, also has a day job at the Iliad bookstore, which is not far from Dark Delicacies. And the Iliad has once or twice done signings.
What about Book Soup? Is that still around?
Book Soup does do, yeah, that's right. But here's the sad news for peons like us. Book Soup does signings for John Grisham and Richard Osman.
More mainstream.
Yeah, like
yes.
Okay. I've just been there for
signing
Clive.
A Book Soup for videotapes from hell. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Yeah, I understand what you mean.
But yeah, no, of course, and the chain, Barnes and Noble, the brick and mortars will occasionally do signings. But I mean, the sense of a place where, when there's a new Cemetery Dance anthology, or if there's a new, you name it, Joe Hill novel or a Dave Scow book.
Yep.
I mean, Dark Delicacies did a signing, at least one signing every weekend for 30 years.
Yeah.
So there's no equivalent of that. Yeah. The big titles could be at Book Soup or B&N, and maybe the Iliad. I'll work on Lisa tomorrow. I'll give her a nudge and see if we can talk the Iliad into picking up the slack from DD.
Yeah.
But yeah, it really will be. It's like every weekend there was a whole event at Dark Delicacies.
Yeah.
That'll be gone.
So it creates this feeling of community, and the same people can keep coming back. Yes.
Absolutely.
Well,
yes,
even
exactly.
I felt that, and I live in Alaska, right? I mean, it's like,
there you go.
Yeah.
Right. And just to clarify, it's not that Dark Delicacies are closing because of lack of business. They've kept this thing alive for 30 years. They probably won't mind me saying Del and Sue are now both in their 70s, and they're just done. They are retiring.
Yeah.
The business is not failing. They are retiring because they're done with the likes of us.
Yeah. They want to enjoy their retirement, which is totally understable.
Yeah. Golden years, yes.
It's funny when you mentioned that Stuart Gordon, and we're just closing down soon, but I just wanted to say I just found out that he did make a movie called Kabbalah's Scary Jewish Stories in 1999, and now I'm going to have to go back and watch that.
Hey, sorry, you were trying to say that like 20 minutes ago.
Yeah. Oh, I bet. Sorry.
That's funny. It says here, he did make that movie in 1999, Kabbalah Scary Jewish Stories by Stuart Gordon. Huh.
Wow.
I'm gonna get into that. See if I can find it and watch it because that's interesting.
No, it's amazing all these threads that connect to each other.
Yeah. Well, I'm clear. Obviously, I'm hypothesizing. I do not know this, and sadly, we've lost Stewart, so we can't ask him. But my assumption is that movie exists as a direct consequence of him not doing Hellraiser 4, not doing Bloodline, and getting the Kabbalah stuff out of his system.
Yeah. Right,
he must have felt when it didn't happen, well, fuck those guys. I'm going to make...
It says here that has tales.
I've never heard of this. Had you heard of it before?
No. I found an article about it, so I'm gonna find out more information. But it says here when Gordon explores his Jewish roots, you get tales of debauched Kabbalists shtetl zombies and water demons in the mikvah. Looks like this might have been a theater play. It says here at the Lex Theater, Lexington Avenue.
Yeah, I think right.
Because this might have been theater.
Yeah, well, he did reanimate a musical.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Again, I can't claim this, but he did reanimate the musical a couple of years after I did Wishmaster the musical.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember him. Well, no, but specifically at that signing I'm talking about, where we'd bumped into it, first time we'd met in 10 years. He said, "What the hell is this, Wishmaster the musical?" Because he'd come out of theater as I had before the movies, so he was very amused and delighted that I'd done a Wishmaster the musical. Period. That's all I know.
Yeah.
2 years later, he did Reanimator the musical. So I like to think that I inspired him to think, well, if he can do fucking Wishmaster, I can do Reanimator.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I do not know that. I also know, and I think I was in and out of town for its run, but Reanimator the musical actually gave out plastic sheeting for the first 3 rows of the audience.
Oh,
because
like going to see war,
that you were going to be covered in blood and viscera.
That's hilarious. Cool. I still have a fright bag from Hellbound, Hellraiser 2. That's
I've never physically seen one. I've seen pictures.
It's just white with the Hellbound Hellraiser 2, and then says fright bag instead of barf bag. And it's a fun little item.
If Stewart Gordon kind of dodged a bullet, though, because how miserable would he have been trying to be?
Yes, he would have had. Well, again, this is hypothesis, but my assumption is he would have had as awful an experience with the Weinsteins as Kevin Yeager did.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't like they had it in for Kevin specifically. They were just they were fucking him over on the budget, and so yes, all of that would have. I'm assuming all of that would have happened with Stewart as well.
Right, and then they kept the franchise hostage for the next 10 years or so.
And speaking of Wishmaster, really quickly, this is something that Jose and I had talked about for a while. We wanted to know if you'd be interested in at some point doing, and we can cut this out, but if you'd be interested in some point doing a commentary on Wishmaster with us.
Sure.
That'd be fun.
That'd be great. Yeah.
That sounds fun.
Again, I doubt I'll watch the movie, but I'm happy to to answer any.
I'm sure you have it in your head. Yeah,
maybe. But yes, a Wishmaster episode would be lovely. It's always fantastic to talk to you guys. So.
Oh, thank you.
I love his voice.
As long as you don't feel Wishmaster is too outside the ethos of the cast.
But you're the thing that connects them together. So
there you go.
That's right.
Yeah. I still can't believe or even when we ever do that, I can't believe that I was dumb enough when Bob Kurtzman and I were rounding up everybody to get in Wish, because it's a real horror reunion thing. And we got Tony and we got Robert,
Angus, Tony Todd,
Raymond, all those.
Yeah.
And I never thought to say, let's get Doug. Now, obviously, Doug wasn't living here yet, so he probably, and I very much doubt, because again, it was a low budget-ish movie, so I doubt they would have sprung for the airfare to bring him just for a cameo. But he could have slept on my couch and paid for a coach ticket himself.
Sure.
And it just never, and it kills me now when I see it and I think that we got everybody in this. The pantheon of those movie monsters.
It's true.
Yeah.
Decade, except my guy, my old friend.
Yeah.
That is a glaring omission.
He might have said no, because I would have said, well, they'll pay you scale and they won't fly you over, but you can sleep on my couch. And he probably would have said, fuck off. But I wish
Yeah.
in retrospect that we'd got him in, because then the pantheon would be complete.
It would have been complete.
But we didn't have Gunner, right? We didn't have a Leatherface in there, so
that's right. That's true. Yes. So there's only one last feature on this thing, which is basically just an author talking about a little run through of Clive Barker's books and
movies. He talks about the movies quite a bit too.
That's right. It was Books of Blood and Beyond by author David Gatward. It's heavy in trailer material, but it's interesting to see someone go through that. It's a big. Usually, I would say this is more to attract new fans to, like, what Clive has done in movies.
It's like did you know Clive Barker did more than Hellraiser kind of thing?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Like, because
which offends the hardcore fans, because they're like, of course I did.
Hellraiser is the gateway. That's always been kind of the gateway. So that's
well, I mean, do you guys think that? Because I mean, I think obviously it can be the gateway, but I always thought there was because the Books of Blood had been so successful in publishing, I just assumed Clive had a fan base anyway.
That's true, but I don't know that those people
new people.
I don't know that contributed to Hellraiser's success, though. I'm not sure.
Oh no, I agree.
I see the point you're saying. I see the point you're saying, because
that it was.
It was an anthology that had a lot of accolades
following anyway, and didn't need Hellraiser as a gateway for people who might enjoy his books, because I saw
Nightbreed first, and I had heard of Clive Barker and the Books of Blood, but I hadn't read them yet.
Right.
And so I saw Nightbreed, and it blew me away. And then I'm like, I gotta get Cabal, and I gotta get the Books of Blood, and that was what kind of started me on the whole thing.
You bring up a very interesting point, and I think for some people, Hellraiser might have been more of a gateway, especially depending on where you lived, because I feel like, yes, in Britain, obviously the Books of Blood made a big splash in America as well. Mm-hmm. However, Hellraiser came right on the tail of that, right? So I guess at this point we'll never know if Hellraiser had not been done at that point. Yeah. For me, it was Hellraiser for sure, because we didn't have Clive Barker translated in Portugal.
What's weird is, time passes differently, or in terms of one's perception, time seems to pass differently at different stages of your life. And certainly when what you've just said, it's like, well, yeah, of course, Books of Blood was 84 and Hellraiser was 87. They're practically the same time. Yeah. Experientially, that wasn't what it felt like then. Because, first of all, when you're younger, 3 years is longer than it feels now. As I'm sure even youngsters like yourself are starting to
oh my gosh, having a kid makes time just go by like
a
nothing.
Feels like a year used to. It's so I'm agreeing with you, but just sort of noting that it's like, oh yeah, Clive seemed to have firmly established himself both with Books of Blood and Damnation Game, and much as he didn't like them, Rawhead Rex and Transmutations.
Right.
And yeah, you're right. When I look back, it's like, it's practically right on top of each other, 84 and 87. At the time, it seemed like, oh, now he's moving into.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. It's
and I think that if Clive was putting out books as fast as he did in the early 90s and late 80s, I don't know if I'd have time to read them as fast as he writes them. I did back then, when I was in high school, but
right. But so there you have it, folks. This is disc 4 of Hellraiser Quartet of Torment. And Pete, you gave us some really good insight and some stuff I've never heard before today. So it's always
a relief, because as you know, my terror when I do, it's always fantastic to talk to you guys, but it's like, oh my God, I'm going to tell the same fucking stories again.
No,
not
at all.
So
you came up with some good stuff.
There's some nuggets of novelty in there.
Yes. And now you've pushed me into other directions. Now I know that if Stuart Gordon has something that I want to find out more about,
well, I wonder if it's a shame that it's a play, not a shame, but it's a shame that we can't see that. But I wonder if somebody videoed it. I wonder if there's a video.
I'll look into it and then I'll let you know what I can find. Absolutely. Right. And I'll dig out those pictures of Ringo and Doug and David Spade that you mentioned.
Yeah.
But as usual, it's always great to have you. So I hope people go to check out Videotapes from Hell and read your stuff in there and enjoy the book.
Yeah.
And also your other book that's still available, All Our Hearts. Where is that?
Yeah,
Our
what's
Ghosts.
it called now? You can't even remember the title. Look at
I was trying to find the book.
All
Our Hearts Are Ghosts. I was trying to find the book in my shelf, but I think it's in my bedside table, actually. So
as it should.
That's where mine is too.
No, thank you guys again. It's always great. Lovely to see you. Lovely to talk. And also, just for the record, I would like to thank all the younger contributors. As you point out, all these extras, not only on this one disc, but on each of the discs. There are the younger generation filmmakers and novelists and short story writers saying lovely things about all the shit we made 30 years ago. So so many thanks to all those contributors and to Arrow for doing it. But mainly,
it does feel like this is kind of the definitive, like, I don't know how anybody could do better than this, going forward. Right. Maybe they'll think of something, I don't know, but it's really great. And it's got Phil and Sarah's book in there too. Ages of Desire.
Yeah. Which I don't think.
The only difference, in case people's ears perked up when I said 2 hours ago, there's a cheaper edition now in a purple cover called the Hellraiser Tetralogy. It's got all extras imported from the discs. It doesn't have the book. That's the big difference between Quartet of Torment but if you can live without Phil and Sarah's book, and why would you? It's great. But if you can live without Phil and Sarah's book, you can save yourself $100 on the.
That's right.
But thank you again, guys. This was great. And
this was super fun.
I'll look forward to the next one, whether it's Wishmaster or something else.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you so much. Right. Yeah,
thanks for your time. I'll let you know what I can find about other stuff that we discussed.
Sure.
Yeah.
Take care. Have a great weekend.
All right. Thank you. You too. Well, coming next, Jericho Squad 77 is going to be continuing. I'm just now starting to poll everybody to see if we can set a date to record that one.
Okay.
The Book Club of Blood in the Hills of the Cities will be coming soon. Yeah. And then, of course, more news and interviews and stuff. And we just talked about maybe we'll get to do Wishmaster commentary with Pete Atkins.
Oh, that would be a great excuse to go back to that. I would probably watch the first couple and then see how that goes. Because I know there's like 4 of them or 5, right? So I don't know what Pete thinks about.
I think I've only seen the first 2. I don't know if I've seen the third and fourth ones.
Sure. But like you said in the conversation, I just love the Wishmaster and the idea of the character and how it was created and the way that he's so and Andrew Divoff, right? I mean, he's got such a great face.
Yeah.
Great face. He's just so cool.
Yeah.
He really should have become bigger than he did with Wishmaster.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. He was a great character actor.
Yeah.
Or is, I guess. Yeah. All right. Well, and this podcast, having no beginning, will have no end. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you have subscribed or followed our podcast. You can find the Clive Barker Podcast wherever you find audio. Show notes for this episode, as well as news and reviews, can be found at our website at www.clivebarkercast.com. The Clive Barker Podcast, or BarkerCast, is an independent editorial podcast and blog that's not affiliated with Clive Barker or Seraphim Inc. This is a labor of love by the fans for the fans. You can chat with us on our Facebook BarkerCast listeners group, our Facebook page, Reddit, Blue Sky, or our Discord server. Have you already bought our book? The BarkerCast Interviews Occupy Midian, available in Amazon hardcover, Kindle, and Apple Books. Join our Patreon and become a patron to get access to exclusive stuff, pick an episode topic, or maybe join in the discussion. You can also buy a t-shirt in our TeePublic store. Just go to teepublic.com/stores/BarkerCast. Leave a voicemail for us on the SpeakPipe link on our blog and we might put it in the episode. Opening and ending music generously provided by Ray Norrish.
Thanks for listening.